Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to be showing you how to do these easy desert bases. It's a fun technique and you can adapt it in all kinds of different ways. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to need obviously is a base. And for the sand, we're using this Vallejo Diorama FX ground texture paste. It's basically sand in this acrylic medium, and it's really easy to work with. I'm just going to use a sculpting tool, and we're going to cover the entire base with this stuff. So just slop it right on. Don't be shy with this stuff. You can just really heap it on there, slop it up, and make sure you get right to the edge. If there's any on the rim, you're going to want to wipe that off, but if it dries, that's fine. You can just scrape it off later. But yeah, cover the entire base with this stuff. And then to create the sand texture, we're going to be using the side of the tool to draw the product up. If you've ever frosted a cake, it's kind of like that. You're not drawing lines by pulling the tool across, you're pulling it up. It's kind of hard to see in the light here, but you want to create these sort of parallel lines in the paste. And try to make them a little, irregular or rounded, just because sand doesn't create perfectly parallel lines. And again, hard to see, but I'll show you a dried version in a sec so you can get a sense of what it's going to look like. This is going to take a while to dry, so just leave that, for an hour or so. This is what it looks like dried. It's a little clear, but that doesn't matter because we're going to be painting it. So if there are any dried bits on the edge, just scrape those off. And for this, I'm going to be doing a blue color. That's what I did for the Beastman Kill Team. You can do whatever. The basic idea here is we're starting with a dark base and we're going to build up through a series of dry brushes. So I'm using a Night Lord's blue. I'm using a bunch of different blues on this, but really you could also just use one color and lighten it with a white. I happen to have like 8 different blues for some reason, but you can adapt this however you like. I don't actually even know if deserts look blue at night. I think that might just be something you see in cartoons, but I liked the aesthetic, and it fit with my minis color scheme, so I decided to go with that. So for the base coat, we're just going to cover the entire base, hence the name. So just fill that in, and obviously you're going to want to let that dry before you start dry brushing. So we're going to move up to a lighter blue at this point, and I'm using a mix of different brands here, but these are what I had on hand. You shouldn't feel like you have to stick to one manufacturer or anything like that. I think people getting into miniature painting think like, oh, I have to use just GW paints or just Vallejo or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Use whatever you have, whatever fits your budget and your style. So we're doing a dry brush now, and you want to make sure with this dry brush that you're hitting it from one angle. The idea here is that we're trying to create the illusion of light hitting these dunes. So unlike a regular dry brush where you might go back and forth or in circular motions, we're going to be trying to hit one angle, just the strokes just hitting from the one side. So you can already see we're picking out some of that texture, some of that elevation there. And next we're going to move up to a brighter blue and basically repeat that process. We're layering these dry brushes to create this illusion of, kind of emphasize the height. That's a lot of what miniature painting is just creating the illusion of size and height and variation. The reason we don't have to do that stuff on full-scale statues or objects like that is because light does it for us. But at a smaller scale, we really need to exaggerate those things to make them pop and to make them more eye-catching, and that's what we're trying to do here. So we're doing another dry brush. Same thing, hit from one angle, and just really go for that. And we're going to move up to an even brighter blue, And again, you could just use one color and just lighten it as you go. I'm just trying to make use of all of the blues that I've somehow acquired, and yet I don't have like a single green or red or anything. I'm not sure how this happens. Don't be like me, make better choices. But again, I'm wiping the dry brush off there on the texture palette and then on my hand just to test. One thing I will say about dry brushing that is a mistake that I used to make up until pretty recently is wiping off your dry brush on a paper towel is not great, because that's going to suck out a lot of the medium in the paint and leave just the pigment. So if you get a really chalky dry brush, it doesn't matter so much for something like this where it is incredibly textured and it's not like a really fine detail. But if you find when you're trying to dry brush that you get like chalky results, it's often because you're losing too much medium and keeping too much pigment. That's something I learned from Byron at Artist Opus, and who is basically the king of dry brushing as far as I know. So just something to take note of is to, you know, wipe off your brush on a texture palette and then test it on your hand. I'm going up to a white here just because I wasn't happy with the contrast that I got from the blues. It's a lighter dry brush because we're really just trying to pick out those edges. And you could stop here. That looks pretty good, I think. Obviously, you'd want to paint the rim black, or if you're a pervert, some other color. But that looks pretty good, right? And if you have a huge army, you could do this pretty quickly. The only thing I will say is you want to make sure that there's enough room in between the dunes for your model's feet to sit, because it's possible to do this technique with the mini on the base already, but it's a little harder. So I would say do it like this. This last step is optional, but I like it. I'm going to use an orange contrast paint here to emphasize the shadows even more. I'm using orange and not black because it's a complementary color to blue, and I think it just creates a little more interest visually. If you were using, say, like yellow sand, then using a dark purple would be really nice. But you can experiment with this. You can use like a watered down black paint. You could use like a dark contrast paint, whatever you want. I'm doing the orange here, and you want to make sure when you're doing this that you have some water or medium nearby to thin out that paint as you're putting it down, because you don't want pools of contrast paint here. You want to blend out the edges a little bit, and this is still a really forgiving technique. It's pretty straightforward to just lay down some paint, get some water or some contrast medium and pull it out a little bit, just making sure those edges aren't too harsh. But again, this is going to be under your model's feet, so, and it's also sand, so it's like some imperfections are to be expected, right? It's natural. This is an organic kind of, or not organic, but you know, it's not a manufactured item, so it's okay to have some variation and some imperfections, but just make sure that, yeah, you pull out those shadows a little bit with some water just to make sure that they're not totally pulled up. And again, you could skip this, but I like the contrast that it adds. And that's about done there. That's the finished base aside from the rim. And I'm going to show you again the base with the model on it, which is from a Beastman kill team that I painted a little while ago. So you can take a look at that, what it looks like. It's right here. I'm really happy with how these bases ended up looking on these models. It's a simple technique, it's fun to do, and I hope you guys try it out. If you have any requests for other basing techniques you'd like to try, please let me know. And until next time, have a good day.